Imagine a room full of people shouting to be heard. Everyone is selling something, posting something, explaining something, begging for a second of attention. But in the corner, there's one person in silence. He's not looking at his phone, he's not performing, he's not competing, he's watching the room. And strangely, he's the only person you can't stop thinking about. That's the psychology of people who keep their life private. A quieter type, a more intentional type. A type the world can't help but notice, even when they don't say much at all. These are the private ones. The people who choose silence over noise, depth over attention, intention over exposure. And here's the part no one tells you. The more private someone is, the more others want to understand them. Because privacy creates a rare psychological effect, a mix of mystery, quiet confidence, and emotional self-control that makes private people stand out without trying. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly why people who keep their life private often become the most respected, most grounded, and most misunderstood individuals in any room. Open your mind. Let's break down the psychology. The core truth. Why some people stay private. People who keep their life private aren't avoiding the world. They're filtering it. They don't disappear because they're insecure. They disappear because they're selective. In psychology, this is called identity preservation, the instinct to protect your inner world from unnecessary noise, unwanted opinions, and people who misinterpret everything. Private people understand something that most forget. Not everyone deserves access. Not everyone deserves your story. Not everyone earns your trust. So instead of over-explaining, they observe. Instead of oversharing, they reflect. Instead of seeking attention, they seek clarity. And this creates a quiet psychological power. Because when you speak less, people pay more attention when you finally choose to speak. When you show less, people become curious about what you're not showing. When you reveal only what matters, your presence feels intentional. This is the first trait of private people. They choose depth over exposure. And that choice alone changes the way others see them. The quiet advantage. Why private people stand out. Think about characters like Thomas Shelby, or real-life figures like Keanu Reeves. They speak less. They don't explain their moves. They don't overshare their lives. And yet, the world is obsessed with them. Why? Because in a world where everyone is an open book, the closed book becomes irresistible. Privacy creates curiosity. Silence creates authority. And restraint creates power. Here's something interesting. The more someone tries to be noticed, the easier they are to ignore. But the people who keep their life private, the ones who stay calm, quiet, intentional, they are the ones who stand out without trying. Why? Because silence has weight, stillness has presence, and privacy creates something incredibly powerful in psychology, the curiosity effect. When you don't reveal everything, people begin to fill in the blanks. They wonder who you are. They wonder what you think. They wonder what you're capable of. Private people activate what social psychologists call the quiet confidence signal. It's subtle. It's unspoken, but everyone feels it. You know this person, they don't post much, they don't talk much, they don't force anything. Yet somehow, when they enter a room, everyone senses something different about them. Not arrogance, not mystery for attention, but self-possession, a grounded inner life that doesn't need validation. And here's the surprising part. People trust private individuals more, because privacy feels intentional, and intention feels reliable. But this quiet strength comes from somewhere deeper, a pattern almost all private people share. The root. Why privacy becomes a survival skill. Private people aren't born private. They become private. And almost always, it starts with one thing, being misunderstood. Somewhere along the way, they learn that when they shared too much, people used it against them. When they opened up, someone didn't listen, or didn't care, or took advantage. So they made a quiet decision. My peace matters more than being understood. Psychology calls this emotional self-preservation, the instinct to protect your inner world after it has been mishandled. So they stop explaining themselves. They stop broadcasting their life. They stop giving people information they haven't earned. Not because they're cold, not because they're afraid, but because they finally understand that privacy is protection, privacy is clarity, privacy is control. And here's the part that resonates with millions of people. Private individuals don't fear loneliness. They fear exposure to the wrong people. They don't need a crowd. They need safety. And they create that safety through selective access. This is why private people often feel older than their age. They've learned emotional boundaries most people don't learn until much later in life. But there's one psychological rule that truly defines them. The rule: not everyone deserves access. Here's the belief that shapes the entire mindset of people who keep their life private. My life is not public property. Most people share first and regret later. Private people do the opposite. They observe first, evaluate second, and choose carefully who gets access. This is not secrecy. This is emotional intelligence. Psychologists call it selective vulnerability, the ability to open up only in environments where your words won't be twisted, judged, or weaponized. Private people live by a simple internal rule. Just because someone is curious doesn't mean they're entitled to answers. So they don't overshare. They don't justify themselves. They don't explain their every move. They protect their inner world because they know how rare peace is. And here's something deeply relatable. When private people trust you, they don't give you half access. They give you full authenticity. They don't have surface-level friendships. They don't gossip. They don't collect people. They invest in depth, not quantity. And this makes their presence feel different, calmer, sharper, more intentional. But there's a misconception people have about individuals who stay private. And it's time to clear it up. Misconception: break private doesn't mean cold. A lot of people get this wrong. Just because someone is private doesn't mean they're distant. Doesn't mean they're unfriendly. Doesn't mean they're cold. In fact, the psychology says the opposite. Private people often form deeper, stronger, more loyal connections than those who share everything with everyone. Why? Because when they care, they really care. When they open up, they open fully. Not halfway, not selectively, not for attention. Private individuals don't spread their energy thin. They give it to the people who matter. That's why their friendships feel profound. That's why their love feels sincere. That's why their presence feels grounding. They don't compete for attention. They don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. They don't chase validation. They simply show up as themselves once they trust you. And here's the surprising part. Research shows that private people are often better listeners, more emotionally stable and more empathetic than people who constantly broadcast their lives. They're not hiding from the world. They're just choosing what deserves to be seen. But there's one trait private people share that gives them a level of emotional power most don't expect. The last trait: emotional self-control. One of the greatest strengths of private people is something most never notice at first. They don't react. They respond. There is a difference. People who overshare often react impulsively. They speak too fast, post too soon, explain too much, and regret it later. But private individuals operate differently. They pause. They reflect. They think before they reveal. This creates something extremely powerful in psychology: narrative control. When you control what you share, you control how your life is interpreted. You control your story. You control your energy. You control your emotional world. Private people understand that every reaction is a form of communication, and they refuse to let others dictate theirs. So instead of broadcasting emotions, they regulate them. Instead of giving everyone access, they give access intentionally. Instead of letting the world drain them, they protect their emotional bandwidth. And here's the deeper truth. People who stay private don't suppress their emotions. They manage them with precision. They know that not every feeling deserves an audience. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every moment should be made public. This calm, deliberate self-control creates a sense of quiet strength that people naturally respect. But we still need to explore the final and most important insight: why being private is not just a personality trait, but a psychological advantage. The danger of living out loud, but here's the part most people never consider. There is a real danger in living out loud. When you share everything, you give ammunition. The neuroscience is clear. External validation, likes, comments, reactions, hijacks your dopamine system. Slowly, you stop living for meaning and start living for approval. You become emotionally outsourced. The private person isn't just reserved. They are the only one who escaped the approval matrix. While others are addicted to being seen, private people remain sovereign. The turn: why being private is actually a strength. Here's the truth most people overlook. Privacy creates power. Not the loud kind. Not the showy kind. but the kind of power that comes from clarity, control, and emotional independence. When you keep your life private, you avoid unnecessary drama. You avoid unnecessary comparisons. You avoid unnecessary expectations. You stay focused, you stay grounded. You stay aligned with what matters. People who overexpose themselves often lose direction. Their life becomes a performance. But private people, they don't perform. They live. They choose their battles carefully. They choose their relationships intentionally. They choose what deserves their attention. And that choice creates a quiet confidence that people feel immediately. Because you can't be manipulated by opinions you don't depend on. You can't be controlled by judgments you don't internalize. You can't be shaken by noise you don't allow into your world. This is the real psychological advantage of people who keep their life private. They own themselves, their time, their thoughts, their emotions, their identity. And that kind of inner stability is rare, powerful, and deeply magnetic. But before we close this video, there's one last message, and it's the part people share the most. Is this you? And now that you've seen the psychology behind people who keep their life private, you might be realizing something. This might be you, if you don't share much. If you like your own space, if you speak only when something matters, if you trust slowly, intentionally, carefully, you're not distant. You're not cold. You're not hard to read. You're someone who lives with intention. You're someone who protects their peace. You're someone who values depth over noise. You're someone who understands that your life becomes stronger the moment you stop offering it to everyone. Private people aren't hiding. They're choosing. Choosing their circle, choosing their energy, choosing their truth, choosing themselves. And if this feels like you, just know, you're not alone, you're not strange, you're not difficult. You're simply someone who knows the value of a quiet life and a clear mind. And in a world addicted to constant exposure, that's not a weakness. So here's the challenge. For the next week, disappear a little, observe more, speak less, share only what matters, and watch what happens. Watch how people listen differently. Watch how your mind becomes quieter. Watch how the world subtly starts leaning toward you, simply because you stopped leaning toward it. Privacy isn't hiding. It's choosing power.